Hi, I'm Linda K. Gifford, finally getting going here today. We have a lot to unpack. Today we're going to talk about the P in spades, but for the sake of rolling in here, um, I'll just give you a little update. Some really cool stuff's been happening. Um, Shocked, actually. I've got a trailer that's about to be made by an Emmy Award winning, an Emmy Award winning cinematographer is going to be making a 3-minute trailer for me as soon as we schedule that. I have to decide if I'm going to do it from home or fly to Philadelphia. That sounds like a lot of fun, but home sounds a lot easier. So that's going to be soon. I'm going to have an actual trailer, which means I'll actually have to start on time with both of my podcasts, which this is going to be not those nasty women talk. You may expect some anger and profanity on those nasty women talk, but not today. Today, I am working in a I love everybody, nonpartisan, non gender specific way with anybody who has experienced childhood sexual assault. And whether you know it or not, if you did, you've probably developed what's called complex post traumatic stress syndrome. And complex post traumatic stress syndrome is very much like PTSD, but there are also some very big differences. Age of onset and the fact that the complex means it was a situation that the usually a child, but it can be an adult with prolonged exposure in certain circumstances. Um, when you feel trapped at the mercy of someone who has control of your life and you feel that your life is literally in danger, that is when you develop complex post traumatic stress syndrome. And because that happens in childhood while your brain is still developing and growing, you are going to naturally develop protective measures. So everyone's brain is different, right? For a long time, people were looking at the normal brain versus the abnormal brain. And pretty much what we've come to realize in the scientific and esoteric scientific community is that everyone is subjected to different experiences, and therefore they're going to have different responses. That being said, there are normal things that happen in the brain of a person who did not experience childhood trauma, prolonged childhood trauma, leading to complex PTSD, and those who did. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the actual neurological differences, as well as dissociation in general, and also dissociative identity disorder. You hear a lot about DID, and people immediately have the idea that multiple personalities means like going civil on the world. Sorry, civil, but it's not like that at all. In fact, I would argue that most of us have alternate voices in our heads that tell us. I mean, if you've got, you know, the what I don't know what you call it, the visualization of there's the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other, um, and they're talking to each other. Well, they don't have to be a devil and an angel. One can be a child, one can be a teenage boy, and one can be a get down to business woman. And those are my three. You might have yours. Busy tells everyone what to do, keeps us in order. I talk out loud in the third person to myself, and I didn't realize that was weird until I came to realize, well, other people said, "Why do you do that?" And I'm like, "Why don't you?" Then I learned that I had cPTSD, and I learned that that is a common thing, and that is actually why we changed the name from multiple personality disorder to um, distinguish, separate it from bipolar personality disorder or from borderline personality disorder, both of which people with cPTSD are usually misdiagnosed first. So misdiagnosis is an important thing that we have to talk about. And mismedication. Medication is destroying people. Medicating for depressive disorder or for bipolar disorder Even if those are really what you have instead of cPTSD, I am absolutely 100% against not any kind of medication. I am not a doctor, so don't discontinue your medication because of anything I say. But if you were sexually assaulted as a child or in any other kind of complex situation that led to complex post-traumatic stress, which can be being in a war zone, being food deprived, your parents might be super loving but couldn't provide for you. You could have been in an emotionally negligent house. It doesn't have to be physical abuse. It might be physical abuse, but not sexual. cPTSD is all-encompassing. I specifically, while much of what I say will help and spill over and can be used by somebody with other types, I specifically was sexually assaulted as a child, groomed for years until I was eventually assaulted for years. And it took me a long time to realize, well, to even say it out loud because of the shame involved and all my personal guilt. Finally came to realize I'm not the guilty party here. I'm not the guilty party here. And so that's where we start my SPADES program. And last week we talked about the S in SPADES, and it's on YouTube under the playlist there. Search for playlists. I have several playlists, but the Thriving Spades playlist will have it. And shame, realizing it's not yours, is the first thing. But for the sake of not doing that again, moving on. I'm going to separate the past from the present. And that is the hardest thing to do, and the biggest step, and the thing that you'll do a lot. The more that you practice, I don't call it a daily practice or anything like that, although Crappy Childhood Fairy has a daily practice. It's wonderful. I recommend everybody with cPTSD that's not sexual specific, and even if it is, I gain a lot from listening to both Patrick Teehan and Anna Runkle of the Crappy Childhood Fairy. Also, Dr. Kim Sage is a great source of information about cPTSD that is not specifically sexual assault. So back to that. The complex part means, back to the top, this has become part of your neural net. This has become part of how you process everything else in life, how you deal with the world. The skills that you learned that required when you're being sexually violated as a child, you have to find a way to separate that from normalcy. You have to go to school. You have to be a good student. My father was a minister turned high school teacher to counselor to vice principal to principal. So always in the school system. My parents were wonderful. They had no idea what was going on. I was just babysitting. We lived out in the country. I was babysitting in town. And when I would be assaulted, which took years because the grooming started first, the giving alcohol to a minor, the calling me sexy, the taking me on motorcycle rides, and the just generally being my pal, and then saying I'd be a better mom than the kid's mother is. And this person isn't, okay, while I want to say he's a monster, I want to reiterate, it's the language of society that sets up people to sexualize children. And I absolutely hold him accountable, but not in a please don't go kill him sort of way, okay? In a it's time to wake up and change the language of society, which is why I wrote the book Call It Assault right here. This is a retractable tabletop cover for events. Is that cool or what? I'm pretty excited. I'm easy to please and shocked and thrilled. I have an image specialist and a curly hair specialist and a wardrobe color specialist and retractable tabletop things. I just became, I was just asked to be a brand ambassador for a line of jewelry I love. It's called WO Riva, R-I-V-A, official, W-O Riva official. Probably pronounced Riva. And it's wonderful jewelry. It's a little bit pricey, but not in a bad way. I mean, it's nice jewelry. And it's designed for girls. It's very just beautiful. I don't want to say modest. I want to say delicate and beautiful jewelry, and also bags and undergarments and things for women, for girls, with them in mind. And they've asked me to be a brand ambassador, and of course I said yes, I will. So back to the P in spades. Dissociating can look like a lot of things. And when a person is dissociating, they may just look like they're spacing off. Some mental or environmental trigger took their mind to a thought about what had happened to them. And then their mind has choices. And the mind of somebody with complex PTSD, sometimes we fight, sometimes we fly, sometimes we freeze. That's what we always say, right? But in reality, quite often we do all three at the same time. So when you fight and try to fight and you try to freeze and try to fly at the same time, you're confused. It's the rabbit hole of confusion. It's the rabbit hole of crazy, I call it, but I think that's kind of rude to people like me with cPTSD. So the goal is, when you are triggered in life, to learn to not dissociate, or at least to not do it in that jump down the rabbit hole way. I know that it feels better. Actually, it does. To lose your mind and yell and kick and scream and just, it's a way of letting it out, letting the stress out. And once in a while, I do go stand on a cliff and just scream. Primal screaming is a wonderful tool. I highly recommend primal screaming from time to time. Just make sure that your spouse is aware you're about to do it. Not that that ever happened or anything. Just saying, letting it out is very important. But separating the past from the present is difficult because you have body memory that kicks in before your memory, your mind makes words and thoughts out of it. Your body's already reacting to whatever the stimuli is. And some really interesting quantum physics studies show now that people in studies where they're shown like videos of scenes that happen, and they measure their response, how they changed, like if it was a frightening thing or a horrific thing or a pleasant scene, right? Their waves changed to reflect that. Well, they did the same experiment. They noticed, or while doing that experiment, they noticed that the people were already changing their perception to the happy or the horror or the disgusted or the sexified or whatever. They were already doing it before they saw the picture. So that's pretty freaky stuff there. But obviously, we are interacting with the world around us at a metaphysical quantum level, as well as talking about this rabbit hole in the physical world. So what you have to do, and what you can learn to do, is recognize the feeling, the tingle. Everyone's got a different one, but for me, I can feel just kind of like myself go numb. I kind of feel drifty. I feel like I'm spacing, like I'm drifting away. And instead of allowing myself to either dissociate completely to where I don't think about it and shove it into my heart and gut, which I've talked a lot about that, it's not good for you, or, letting it out crazy, I catch that moment, I feel it, and I accept it. I accept, okay, I was a sexual assault victim. I am a child sexual assault survivor right now. I am being triggered. It's normal. I just sit there and I let it wash over me. It's like a wave. I can let it wash over me. It's not a great wave. It may feel like a wave of clay or mud, but it's going to go by. And what you can do in that moment that's very helpful. And one of the first things that I was taught by one of my therapists was to just say what you see. You probably can't make a coherent thought at that point when you're starting to feel like you're slipping. I'm going to lose it. You know what? You get there, I'm overwhelmed. I just want to scream. When you get to that point, calm the hell down. Remember that egg trick where like someone pretended to tap an egg on your head and you could feel it like, ugh. Do that, but without the ick, more of the and just wait it out. Wait it out. And while you do that, state the one thing that you can tell. Right now, I would say I'm looking at a computer. These are ring lights. That's my window. There are books, a whole shelf of Tom Clancy books. It's 2025. It's March 5th. You say the obvious. If this is a barrette, these things ground you in the present, and they will stop that. It's like a video that comes in. For those of you who don't have PTSD, whether it's complex or not, it's like reliving it. It's not just a memory, it's a body memory. It's a mental and a body memory. And you are feeling it, smelling it, hearing it, and oftentimes you don't know that it's not actually happening now. So it's important to learn the skills to, at that moment of feeling that, again, separate from it, to identify what's happening. And now, instead of shoving it in your heart and gut, I want you to make a mental file, one in the open of your mind, one you can access if you want to, and put away if you don't. A file that's there for informational purposes now. And the way to do that is lots of ways, actually. A lot of people have success with EMDR, but I am autistic. I'm a high-functioning autistic, and I think my brain would explode. I haven't actually done EMDR myself, but trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy did wonders for me in separating the past from the present. Because it also helped me with shame, because when I started, let me back up. What it is drawing or writing, doing something with the memories that gets it into a tangible form. I don't care if you want to sculpt clay, dig in a Zen garden, write it on paper, write poetry, throw paintballs at a wall, whatever gets your mind into seeing what happened to you outside of just feeling it, seeing it, reading it, watching it. For me, I have the notebook of the cognitive behavioral therapy I did, and I didn't know how I was going to start. And I don't want to, trigger warning. I don't want to gross anybody out here, but I was like, okay, I liked him. He was nice. He'd work on his car all the time, and there's me all happy, happy, happy. And then it goes on, and I say what he said. He called me high sexy. And I write then how I feel about him. I put, I like you. You don't mind my company. You smile and laugh a lot. So that's how I felt about him when I met him. And then I go on and I show that I had the memory of sitting at the table and getting drunk, but not knowing I was getting drunk. And then them laughing at me, getting me drunk. And I couldn't have been more than 11 or 12 years old, and babysitting. So be careful what your kids are doing at the babysitter's house. And so I'm drinking, and it turned out it was grape juice and gin. And in my song Little Girl that I wrote all the way back in 1999, 2000, it says, grape juice and gin, kitty cocktails again. Watch the pretty little doll's head spin, right? So, and then this came up just a few years ago in trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. So obviously the grape juice and gin was a gateway to getting me drunk. And the really weird thing about this picture is while I drew my assailant and another assailant person, um, I drew myself as much older, and it almost looks like I have a mask on, which I did not notice, but was told to me. I'm like, I drew myself with a mask. And I say, I'm dizzy and I can't stop laughing. Yes, I want to go driving because you drive off-road and it's fun. I'm driving off in the fields, lived in a small town, right? And then I'll spare you the rest, but I started drawing what happened on those drives. And I'm like, I am a child. And I got it. So trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy will help you realize what your adult versus what your child knowledge and responsibilities are. And I felt that I was guilty and responsible for what happened to me until I was like 36 years old. It wasn't until marital therapy turned into you need sexual assault therapy. And I was like, I never even considered it. And it led to so much good revelation, hard work, writing this book. And I just know that we need to take it further. While I'm going to give these workshops and I'm going to start getting people to provide them and put it out there. And I've got a workbook that goes with the book that'll come out after the book called Thrive in Spades, which is the program that's in the book. But this will be an interactive workbook. And I want this to go out free to everyone. I want institutions to start teaching prevention, to start really teaching and spreading awareness. And on that note, I have joined and I'm going to be working with the Missouri Organization Against Community Sexual Assault in Kansas City. I'm training now and then I go in and do an in-person training to become a speaker for them. And I've also told Joyce Short from the Consent Awareness Network that I will speak on behalf of consent awareness. It's so important that people understand what it does to us. And if you understand that being sexually assaulted as a child repeatedly leads to things like a lifetime of dissociation, maybe you'd start to realize this is really important that we change this. I mean, on a selfish level for partners of people like me, straight up, we become performance artists. We just sexually become performance artists because we might even look like a nymphomaniac at first. I did when I first got out. I wasn't really, and it wasn't that extreme, but I mean, I wanted someone to love me. I thought that if I had sex with someone, then they would call me back and love me. I never called anybody back. I never, I would just assume that if you wanted to have sex with me, maybe you love me. And then you didn't follow up, well, then I'm a horrible person. And see, I sucked. And that's how people with childhood sexual assault related cPTSD often feel about themselves, have negative feelings about sex in general, but they know that it's important. They know they want it, and they have sexual feelings because we're human, and we all do. So that becomes very confusing. And that is a time when oftentimes we dissociate and we let sex happen to us, or we try real hard to do everything you're supposed to do, and it usually fools our partner and they think everything's great. You can fake an orgasm so easy, and most people do. And that sucks, because once you get through that and you find out what the real thing is and how to really bond with another human being on an intimate level, you realize that you weren't doing that thing. And in talking with a lot of people and studying it, I've come to learn that, when 80% of women don't have orgasmic sex, at least now their own orgasm involved, I find that problematic. I don't think orgasms are just for men. And I I'm kind of appalled that there's no emphasis on even teaching women that doing anything other than pleasing men is important. But when you're receiving fully, you can give fully. So if you are not experiencing the kind of bonded sex with your partner that makes you feel exhilarated instead of dissociating, instead of worrying about if you're doing it right, instead of comparing yourself to someone else, or worse yet, I used to, when I was younger, when I was first out, I knew I had sex with someone, but I couldn't remember it, like any of it ever. I still can't. I can tell you a few people I had sex with, but I won't. That, but I can't remember the sex, and that's pretty much everybody that I didn't marry. I, my mind just tuned it out, and that's no way to live. So it's important to separate the past from the present in order to have a fulfilling sex life going down the road. Um, so we obviously, I'm just touching on it. I keep saying that book's coming out, and the reason it hasn't yet is because now I'm in a sponsorship and endorsement quest on one with my publicist. And I have the largest publicist of self-help books in the world that is doing things for me, helping me do things for me as well, teaching me. And so I'm so grateful. I don't even know where to start. I'm like about in tears. I'm so grateful. And I believe in universal timing, not fate so much, but I believe in the coming together of souls for the right reasons. And this is it. Let me switch this over actually to if you are someone who is being sexually victimized, RAIN will route your call to their nearest regional center. You can also go online at rain.com. You can report suspicions of sex trafficking to Thorn. RAIN's number is 1-800-656-4673. And it's also on the screen. I've had that memorized for years. We're going to change the language of society. That's what we're going to do. For the sake of, I'm not supposed to go over half an hour because of upload limits and podcast requests, and I have to care about that stuff now, whereas I used to just blubber on for an hour and a half if I wanted to. You're probably like, oh, thank God you're done. Anyway, I'm gonna go now. Tomorrow, Those Nasty Women Talk will be at 4:00, and in the near future, when we have enough people to do a Zoom group, I'm going to start doing Zooms at 4:00 on Wednesdays following this. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Oh, Linda K. Gifford with an official artist channel on YouTube now. Please sign up. Please subscribe on YouTube. I have 75 YouTube followers, but over 7,100 on Facebook, roughly 2,500, almost that, on TikTok, and 75 on YouTube. I would live stream on YouTube. I have like for years, but I didn't even share the live streams. I just live streamed. It's really just how I wrote the book. Like Stream of Consciousness wrote the book. So